of July. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Nobody's pissed me off yet. I'm sure someone will. Never fails. Always one idiot. There was a guy that flattened my mirror on my truck late Sunday night, early Monday morning. I don't know if I'll be able to post a picture of that or not. If I can, I'll fit it in here. But it was a construction zone. This guy wouldn't hold his lane to save his life. Everybody's in too much of a hurry. And granted, I like driving fast, but this is a totally different thing, especially when it comes to a tractor trailer. Has more to do with what I think is the most dangerous thing with commercial vehicles right now. Probably kills more people than anything else by far, and that is the electronic logbook. The reason is it forces people to be in far greater of a hurry than they should ever be in. They still have to get the job done, you know? And 1 minute means something. 15 seconds means something. You held that truck up for 15 seconds. He may not make it home tonight. He may not be able to park. He might have to reschedule his load. His loads are generally that tight. And before, when it was a paper log, if it was just a couple of minutes, well, you can make that up on paper. You know, no harm, no foul kind of thing. Now the DOT can go through there, you know, a couple of weeks later and write you a ticket because you were driving around the truck stop looking for a parking space. Excuse me. Literally, you're on private property. The last time they went through my logbook, they were giving me shit about that. I drove to the end of my 11 hours, and I'm circling the truck stop, waiting for somebody, you know, to pull out or what have you. I didn't do it long. He said for like 6 minutes I was still driving really, really slow, even though my logbook went off duty. You know, it doesn't matter that your logbook's off duty, doesn't matter that you put your logbook on duty instead of driving. They can still see that your truck's moving. And they can write you a ticket for that. So you have people in way too much of a hurry because they've still got to get down the road. They've still got a family to feed. You can't make anything up. There's no leeway, there's no give, there's no anything like that. And what happens is it's not as much that the truck is going faster because half of them are governed at like 62 or 65. And this guy wasn't governed, so it wasn't one of them. But their mind is going way faster than their truck. Because it's just, I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta go. Everyone's in my way, you're just in that hurry. And the problem with being in that kind of a hurry is you miss the little things. You miss that sign that says like 13-2. Or that no truck sign, or lane ending. You don't see that car that sneaks up in your blind spot, because we only have a little bit of time to see you. Hopefully you're paying attention to the flow of traffic around you, and you're like, I know that car was there, now I can't see them. They're not in front of me, they must be in my blind spot. Hopefully you've got that figured out. But you've also got to remember, a lot of these drivers, they're very inexperienced. A whole ton of them have been driving less than a year, and they won't even make it a year, you know? Most of the truck driving schools say you have a class of 100. You might have a handful, 3, 4, 5, make it 6 weeks. And out of that, in a few months, you might have 2 or 3 of those that are there out of that group. Maybe one at the end of the year. Very few make it to 5 years. It's a whole different life. And especially starting out, you're not making as much money as they promised you. You're definitely not going to be home what they promised you. And what we end up with is those people that do make it around a year, sort of like predatory lending. They'll sucker them into a lease truck. They'll sucker them into being a trainer when they shouldn't be doing either of those. Unless you've got at least 5 years experience, because you just don't know enough about the industry, especially to be leasing a truck. But they'll usually sucker them into a lease truck first, and then when they realize they're paying more per week than I would pay per month on a truck, well, they'll make a trainer out of them. So you have somebody who's been driving about a year, who can't back for shit, hasn't really even got seasoned yet, you know, with all the weather conditions, anything else. You're still really learning. There's a huge learning curve in that first 5 years. Trying to train someone, which they can probably train them how to do the paperwork, that sort of thing. That's no problem. But there's so much more to it. And they're not really being trained, because what happens is they're using them for a logbook. One of them's sleeping while one of them's driving, when that trainer needs to be sitting up in the driver's seat, not the driver's seat, the passenger seat, while the student's driving. And that's usually not the case. So you put these people, they're, for lack of a better term, ignorant about the business. These are the people that the government wants driving trucks. These are the people that your major corporations want driving the trucks. Because these are yes men. These are yes women. These are people who don't know enough to say no. These are people that you can push. So now you're pushing them. You're giving them unreal expectations. And they have this stupid computer that's tracking their every second, their every mile. It's down to the minute. You know? That rush. And I'm not saying more experienced drivers don't get caught in that. But it's a lot different with the new drivers. It never was the logbook before that was causing the wrecks. It was the unreal expectations and the fact that they would blackball you and you wouldn't be able to get a job. They don't have to fire you if they don't like you. Why in the world would you ever have to fire somebody? You know? All you have to do is starve them, which is pretty much the industry standard. They want you to quit, they'll starve you. You're not making enough money, you'll go someplace else. And they'll find somebody else who will be a runner. And that's what they call you when you'll do the loads. When you'll fudge your logbook, when you'll find every way that you can to get the job done. And everybody knows you're driving illegally. DOT knows you're driving illegally. But you have to, or you get fired. Not only do you get fired, Another thing these drivers don't realize, especially, you know, the new ones, most of us older drivers realize this. There's this thing called DAC that newer drivers probably think has something to do with the government. Well, I got news for you. It don't. DAC is owned by a few major trucking corporations. And all it is a blackball list for truck drivers. What's on your DAC report? It's have you been in an accident? Have you gotten tickets? Have you gotten this? It's also if they didn't like you, they can come up with something. They can always find a reason. I mean, they've been putting you on unrealistic expectations, giving you way less time that's needed to do the load. I'm sure they can say that you're habitually late. They can say all kinds of things. They can say that you're a problem driver. There's all kinds of stuff they can say on that DAC report, and they'll blackball you. And we all know it. It just, people who've been out here a while realize that's not a government thing. That's just a trucking industry thing. That's all it is a blackball list where you can't get a job for any reputable company because they got your name on that list. You know, you dropped the truck where they told you to drop it when you quit, but you didn't drop it at the home terminal because, let's say, their home terminal's in Oklahoma City, but you live in Ohio. So they have a yard in Ohio, and they send you to that yard to drop the truck and trailer off when you quit. And you go home, and you think nothing's wrong. Well, now they put truck abandonment on your DAC report. If you have truck abandonment, even though you did nothing wrong, you did what they told you to do. You have truck abandonment on your DAC report, which that's supposed to be like you just cleaned it out and left it at a truck stop and said, fuck you. If you have that on there, no one will hire you. And they'll get you ways like that. Very cutthroat industry to begin with. And I guess everybody likes the stupid. Well, I wouldn't say stupid. The ignorant. The people who don't know enough to know better. And this industry thrives on it. It absolutely thrives on it. Now you put these people in a position where there's no leeway, there's no anything. That's why that truck is right on your ass. That's why that truck is holding up the left lane. You want to know why that dumbass is doing 62.5 miles an hour trying to pass a truck that's doing 62.25 miles an hour for 10 miles down the interstate, and everybody's in a line behind them pissed off because they can't get around? You want to know why they're doing that? Because they can't afford the time on their logbook. That is why they're doing that. They're not going to make it to the place that they absolutely have to make it to. They can't stop at that truck stop that's 5 miles before the one they're supposed to stop at. Because if they do, they're not going to make their delivery. Or they're not going to make their pickup. Excuse me there. That's what kind of pressure these guys are under. So they can't back out of it for anything. They've got that truck wide open doing all it'll do, 62 miles an hour, right up your ass. And if somebody, you know, just hesitates in front of them, they're going to cause an accident because they're going to run right up somebody's ass because they're 3 foot off their bumper. Not to mention when all those cars and everybody gets let loose behind you as they're flying around you, flipping you off. That's a dangerous situation because everybody's, you know, maneuvering for position. You know, just like it might as well be NASCAR, you know? It's a very dangerous situation. I've seen a lot of wrecks happen because of stuff like that. And it's not always the trucks, the four-wheelers' fault. We tend to say it's always the four-wheelers' fault. Even on a bike, you say that. Well, on a bike, most of the time, most accidents are single vehicle accidents and you blew a corner or something. You know, you low-sided, oh shit in a curve kind of thing. Or whiskey throttle, or, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. Well, the truck is a little different. A lot of the times, it is cars with a 18-wheeler. In fact, the vast majority of the time, it's the cars causing the accidents. But you got to pay attention to them. Unless you're going to count truck stop accidents, then it's the driver. When you look at statistics of accidents, you look at insurance companies, stuff like that, when you're talking about a commercial vehicle, one thing you got to realize is most of those accidents are low speed, below 5 miles an hour. And what it is they backed into someone's truck, they caught them with the trailer pulling out, they tore something up at a dock, backing in, backing out. It's that sort of thing. That's what the vast majority is. And that part is more of a learning curve thing. And if they had better training instead of being used as a logbook, that might solve some of it. But I can remember nearly 40 years ago riding with my dad, and people were tearing stuff up then. Granted, they'd pull you out of your truck and beat the hell out of you then, but people were tearing stuff up then, so that's not new. But this stuff going down the road, completely distracted. I mean, most of these people, they're listening to YouTube, they're doing that, which that's not a problem. I listen to YouTube, but you can't be flipping through the thing. You can't be eyes on your phone when your eyes need to be forward. You know, find a podcast, something like that, that's no different than listening to the radio, finding a podcast. You know what time your podcast come on. Okay, cool, put it up. But no, they're scrolling through videos and all that kind of stuff on their phone. Their Instagram, their Twitch, and all that kind of stuff. That's mostly, well, I would say it's mostly younger drivers. But I think the shorter attention span stuff, like the Instagrams, that sort of thing, which I'm on Instagram too, but people my age and up tend to be more on like Facebook, where people younger, they're on the TikToks and Instagram and stuff like that. There's probably more. Most of us, we went through AOL and dial-up and chat rooms to MySpace, which we've all got a MySpace page out there somewhere. And then it went to Facebook, and there are a few other things. By the time it got to Facebook, we were just tired of changing, you know? And that's probably the only thing keeping Facebook in business today. Because older people are just tired of changing. We've watched the platforms go from one to the other to the other. And we're just like, fuck you. And it's the same with YouTube. You know, we'll try out the other platforms, but we've been on it for a while. And we're just not interested as much. It's like, I know this one. Just leave me on here, leave me. But they're scrolling through this stuff. I remember they got this little stand you could put a computer on in the truck, and people are watching movies driving down the road. Now I have a problem with that. I have a problem with looking at a screen while you're driving. It used to be illegal to do that. If you were driving a truck down the road, you could not have a TV screen within sight of the driver. This is when they started putting TVs in trucks back in the 80s and through the 90s. Those laws still exist. I don't know why they don't enforce them. But now we've got GPS, we got Qualcomm, we got all that kind of stuff. I don't have any of that, but most trucks do. And you see all these computer screens in front of their face. You don't need to be looking at GPS when you're driving down the road. That's another thing. Maybe they should require new drivers, you're only allowed to use an atlas for your first year or something, so you learn how to figure your directions out before you get where you're going. Because that's another thing that causes accidents. It's another thing, you know, people are in a hurry, they're lost, they're trying to find out where they're at, their GPS is slow, whatever. GPS put them in a wrong area. I'm not saying don't look up your directions with the GPS. Look it up. I'll use Google and I'll look it up, but then I will actually look at the map and I'll look and say, is that an area where a truck should go? And you shouldn't need a GPS to tell you how to go down Interstate 80 or up I-45 or any of that. You should know how to get from Houston to Chicago without looking at a map if you're driving a truck. Once you get to Chicago, that's where you need a map. And look at that map that Google gives you, or whatever routing program. Now look, does it look like a truck should go in there? Well, look at the city view. Where does it look like my truck should be? And you figure that out ahead of time before you go in there. You have your trip planned, which used to be a big thing. You planned your trip. You sat down with your atlas and your notepad and by the phone at the truck stop, you know. They had the phone sitting there by the table because we all had calling cards. You know, cell phones existed, but they were way too damn expensive. You used a payphone, and you had to call in twice a day. Well, that's just what you did. But you remembered your directions when you got where you were going. You figured out how to find your way around. We didn't need a computer telling us where to go. Now you have people that have been going to the same store their whole life, needing GPS to go 1.5 miles down the road to the grocery store. That is insane. That is like the dumbing down of our entire species. We're doomed. Alien life is not going to land on Earth looking for intelligent life. They're going to say, well, this species had a chance, but then they let the computers take control and they never reached what they would consider intelligence. I don't know. I'm older. I'm jaded on all the technology. But that's dangerous, though. Was my point, is relying on a GPS to give you directions. You know, last minute directions in a truck is a dumb idea. You need to be planning for that turn or that curve or, you know, what have you, long before you get to it, you know. Road's going to veer off to the right, you go to the right. You need to know that before you get there, not last second. You need to know you're turning on First Street, not the First Street. And you need to know what they mean by the First Street. You need to look at the directions. And is it the First Street or is it First Street? Is it Second Street or the Second Street? And if it's the Second Street from the freeway, are they counting the feeder road? If it's a second light, are they counting the lights at the intersection? So you follow through all that stuff, planning your trip. So you have a bunch of people who are in way too much of a hurry. Their mind going way faster than their truck ever could. Reacting at the last second to what they need to be doing instead of planning for it. And unable to even fudge anything. Seconds count. You know, you could lose your job because you stopped and took a piss. You wonder why they're pissing in bottles driving down the road? That's why. It takes you 15 minutes to pull off the road and pull back on the road, much less the 15 minutes you stop to go in and take a piss. That's 30 minutes. That can cost you your job. And that's all just, it works into a very dangerous situation. But anyways, I gotta let you go. Y'all be cool. Deuces, all that good shit. I'll catch you later. If I can figure out how to turn this thing off.